a coincidence, for the sake of this podcast, that we will end things off with this story right over here? Considering that I started the podcast with an upcoming sequel to an animated feature, so why don't we take this recent piece of news and end things off with an upcoming sequel to an animated feature. However, with this one though, I'm honestly having a bit of a hard time to see what else can they do with the material that they have here. I will give credit to the Angry Birds movie. I can see where they can make a sequel with it and take inspirations from many of the other games that they've made, like with the Piggies, or with Angry Birds 2, like the game Angry Birds 2, and all that kind of stuff. I can see where they can expand upon the world of the Angry Birds. But with this one, however, how the fridge can you make a sequel to The Boss Baby? Yes, folks, it has actually been confirmed at DreamWorks Animation that they are in fact making a Boss Baby 2. Now, there isn't any much announcements related to this, however. The only things that they did say, going into my source here in Variety, it did state that the sequel brings back the creative team from the sleeper hit for a new adventure based on award-winning author Maria Frazi's picture book series. So, okay, maybe there is a chance that they are going to take some inspiration from the books, but I'll get to that a little bit later. But yeah, they didn't necessarily specify who among the crew is going to be coming back. They didn't necessarily state that the writer or even director Tom McGrath is going to be coming back, but I do have a feeling that McGrath is definitely going to be coming back for the sequel as the director. But one person in name that they did confirm that will be returning is actually Alec Baldwin to come back as the voice of the title character. And on top of that, they also did announce that there is going to be a release date for it, which right now is going to be a little bit around the same time, which is March 26th, but in 2021. And that's all that we know so far, is the fact that Alec Baldwin is coming back, DreamWorks is making a Boss Baby 2, and that it's going to be released somewhere in the beginning of 2021. I can't really say somewhere in the beginning because we know where that somewhere is. But yeah, like I stated before, I'm actually having a really hard time to figure out how the fridge can DreamWorks actually go and make a Boss Baby 2. Because I'm thinking both in a creative standpoint and a business standpoint, where I'm looking ahead in the future and I don't really see how this is really gonna work out, to be honest. Because, let me just explain first about the creative aspect of it. Let's go into the story of the Boss Baby itself. And beforehand, I just want to give you guys a little bit of a warning, however, that this is going to contain some spoilers of the original Boss Baby, so if you guys want to avoid that, then just skip a little bit ahead so that you don't hear anything, or throughout the podcast, you could just cover your ears and go la 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 la, and all that kind of stuff. Okay, but anyways, if you guys remember, or if you have actually seen the Boss Baby, then you may recall at the end of the movie, it pretty much wraps everything up. It seems to be like it's made to be its standalone movie and doesn't open up to anything that would indicate that there could be more adventures with Tim and the Boss Baby. Like, what ends up happening is that after Tim and the Boss Baby would defeat the CEO of Puppy Co., things would go and get back to normal, and the Boss Baby would get a massive promotion, and he's not necessarily that happy, but then he discovers that Tim also misses the Boss Baby, so the Boss Baby ultimately decided that he wanted to quit his job and actually go and become just a regular baby and actually be Tim's official baby brother and do all that kind of stuff. But at the same time, though, when he does get back into the world of, like, the regular human world and be with Tim and stuff like that, he's just back as a regular baby. Like, all his memories are pretty much washed off. The mentality of a CEO is completely gone. Now he's just your typical baby, and that's pretty much it. And Tim is having a happy life with his new baby brother, who is now called Ted. Now, in that case, how the fridge are they going to bring back the baby's mentality to become, to become the Alec Baldwin baby? Like, how are they going to bring that back? And especially the factor that the boss baby no longer has his, like, special milk. Because if you remember in the movie, there's that special kind of milk that the babies have to continuously drink in order to keep their mentality as a mature business person instead of being an actual baby. So I don't really know how this would actually work out, honestly. Like, does the boss baby suddenly find some of that magic juice and then suddenly bring it back? Or does some of his older employees, like the big dumb baby, like the big gorilla baby, the Asian baby, and the black triplets, somehow have some and they decide to bring his mentality back? Or how is it going to work, honestly? Like, that's probably a big hurdle that they need to go into. How are they going to bring Tim's mentality back into becoming the Alec Baldwin baby? Because I don't know, because when you watch the movie, it seems like it's made more to be its own thing. Like, it doesn't feel like DreamWorks had any intentions to actually go and create a Boss Baby 2 or turn it into this huge franchise. So they pretty much tied up all the loose ends at the end to know what would be going on. So I don't know. It just, on a creative standpoint, it doesn't necessarily make sense. But like I said before, and like what the quote here from Variety actually did state, that it is actually based on a series of picture books by Maria Frazee. So there could, or, oh no, it's not Maria, sorry. I meant to say Marla Frazee. Sorry about that, Marla. I didn't mean to mispronounce your name. I think it's just, oh yeah. No, it's literally a freaking smudge on my computer that's kind of obscuring that L and making it look like an I. I am so sorry about that. Wow, okay, so it is Marla Frazee's book series. But yeah, going back to that, so maybe they could find some inspirations on the book, and maybe they'll have some ideas of what to do to tell more stories with it. I don't know, I haven't seen any of the books, so who knows what they could do with it, but maybe they got ideas, but that's probably the biggest hurdle. How the fridge are you going to bring the boss baby back to his Alec Baldwin mentality, or how are you going to explain it? Okay, so that's the explanation in a creative standpoint, like in the story narrative inside the world of the boss baby. But also there is a bit of a business standpoint that doesn't necessarily make sense. Because part of its success of why the Boss Baby nowadays is actually a major hit is actually because of, and yes, I'm gonna bring him up, Donald freaking Trump. Now, as you may recall, in a previous episode of the Animation Podcast, I have already discussed about how there is no way that DreamWorks Animation made the Boss Baby to be this Donald Trump satire. Any connections that would have with Donald Trump, it's just purely coincidental. And there's no way that anybody, the writer, Tom McGrath, Alec Baldwin, or anybody had the intentions of mocking Donald Trump when making the Boss Baby. It's just pure coincidence that there is some kind of connection right there. However, it did not stop audiences to make those connections anyways. I mean, that's one of the biggest reasons during the time when the movie was close to be released that everybody was making those comparisons to Donald Trump. And yeah, like, as I stated before, there are many connections, but they're just purely coincidental. You know, like, a lot of people would go out and say that Trump and his supporters have the maturity of a baby and can handle criticism as well as a toddler put into a timeout, much like a CEO that's actually a baby. Or that, and also Alec Baldwin is actually the star of this movie. And as we all know, on Saturday Night Live, he actually does this amazing portrayal of Donald Trump. And even during the time when The Boss Baby was released, Alec Baldwin was a pretty huge name. Like, he really made himself big by portraying as Donald Trump in Saturday Night Live. So there is at least that, and that actually did play a huge factor, considering that, like, whenever you would ask someone what is The Boss Baby, like they would pretty much tell you it's a movie where Alec Baldwin plays Alec Baldwin as this CEO baby. You know, that's pretty much all that you get. And like back when his name was hot and compared to Donald Trump, like people were really into that, you know, people were really buying into this. Okay, so with all that said though, I know I made the audience comparisons with Donald Trump. What does this have to do with The Boss Baby 2? Okay, I can guarantee you this as a fact, ladies and gentlemen, that there is no freaking way that Donald Trump will remain president of the United States when The Boss Baby 2 is going to be released. That is a fact right there. I mean, keep in mind, we're talking about the most hated and the worst president of the modern frickin' era. Like, the majority of the country hates his frickin' guts. And he would act, I mean, we're at the point that we are discussing that he's actually going to be pretty lucky if he made it throughout his entire term. Like, with the whole connection with Russia, and by the way, yes, there is actually a lot more connections with Trump and Russia than there actually is Trump and the Boss Baby. That, like, now it's starting to come in, like, closer and closer, where impeachment starts to seem a little bit possible, you know what I mean? And plus the fact that, oh my god, when it comes to, like I said before, the majority of the country hates his frickin' guts, and like the large majority of the world is pretty much mocking the country because they're that stupid to actually elect someone like frickin' Donald Trump as president, who is only beloved by the highly ignorant, who lives in their own frickin' bubble, and the mentally disturbed, who would actually go out and make protests and act exactly like social justice warriors, like the kind of people that they hate, but for the opposite causes, like defending the rights of men and for white people. Although they're most likely doing that just to hide the insecurities that they have about themselves, and they're too afraid to actually confront that. But that's another story right there. But anyways, the whole point that I'm making is that one of the biggest reasons why the original Boss Baby was a huge hit at the box office, and keep in mind, it's actually going really successful considering that it is making, as I'm recording this, it's almost making $500 million worldwide at the box office, that people are making comparisons to Donald Trump. It has that Trump novelty to actually make it relevant, to have people talking about it, you know, to make people make that comparison, to make people aware that Boss Baby is actually a thing. So, when 2021 will come in, where Trump is completely out of the picture, and most likely also the GOP, like, there's gonna be nothing. Like, really, when you take Trump out of the equation of the Boss Baby, what do you get? Honestly, nothing, really. You only have just this animated film that barely offers much. It doesn't even offer really a story. Like I said before, this is a movie where Alec Baldwin is just being Alec Baldwin, but in a baby's body. And that's pretty much it. So really, how can you continue that? Really, when it just feels, because of that Trump novelty, the Boss Baby is more like a product of its time. And it's not DreamWorks' fault. It's mainly because of how audiences interpret it, how audiences treat it. They're the reasons why the Boss Baby feels more like a product of its time and may not continue forward, or at least the success of it would probably not continue when 2021 comes in, where like whatever new president that the United States is gonna get, like they're not gonna make comparisons to the Boss Baby the same way that they're gonna compare it to Donald Trump. That's not gonna happen. So yeah, that's overall my feelings why it doesn't necessarily make sense for DreamWorks to actually make a Boss Baby 2, because creatively, I don't really see how you can continue the story, considering that the movie pretty much wraps up all to make this standalone movie where it doesn't necessarily need a sequel. Like, any continuations that it seems to hint out, it's not necessarily what you would expect with the adventures of Tim and the Boss Baby himself. And also in terms of a business standpoint, because like I said, it has this massive Trump novelty where part of the reason why The Boss Baby was so relevant is because of the comparisons with Donald Trump. So by 2021, there's not really going to be that comparison to make, and not many people are really going to care that much when The Boss Baby 2 is actually going to be coming out. So I don't really know. Overall, I feel like the biggest reason why DreamWorks Animation actually decided to go ahead and make a Boss Baby 2 is pretty much corporate impulse. They didn't necessarily think of why they need to make a Boss Baby 2. They just immediately went ahead and just go ahead and do it, you know? It's kind of like the same reason why they kind of went and decided to go and make Trolls 2, actually, since there's starting to be a bit of a theme that DreamWorks Animation is starting to make a franchise out of their inferior films right now. Like, they can't just always rely on just Shrek, Madagascar, How to Train Your Dragon, and Kung Fu Panda. They need more in their roster, so I guess they want to go and do more with The Boss Baby and Trolls and stuff like that. But yeah, it is more corporate impulse where they don't necessarily think of why they need to do it. They just know they have to do it because The Boss Baby is making a lot of money. And it could be possible that, like Trolls, it could be more the fact that it's not necessarily how it's performing at the box office, but also because of all the merchandising and stuff like that. You know, maybe there are plenty of other factors why The Boss Baby was such a huge hit for DreamWorks. I mean, there is definitely a lot of merchandising that you can find related to The Boss Baby, so maybe it's also for that as well, that it is a pretty large corporate franchise, so that's why they would want to go and continue that in the future. But yeah, honestly, at this point, with the way that DreamWorks is making a Boss Baby 2, it's going to be hard for me to feel like it's either going to be a good movie or if it's even going to be a successful movie. But who knows how it's going to go, but if you guys are excited to actually see a Boss Baby 2, then all you have to do is just wait until March 26, 2021 for that movie's release.